right. Welcome to our interview podcast today. We're going to turn the tables a little bit, and I'm going to become the interviewer. And we're going to interview my dear co-laborer, Steve Martin. And he's the one usually interviewing people. And for, I don't know, at least a few weeks, it's been on my heart that I should probably be interviewing Steve Martin and be able to, because Steve's got such a great story, and we get bits and pieces of it. But I thought, hey, let's do this thing. And by the way, the Steve Martin here that I'm introducing is of celestial fame. He's not the Steve Martin of earthly fame. And we got there's probably, thinking about how common the last name Martin is, there's probably a lot of Steve Martins. But the famous earthly Steve Martin's, great comedian and actor and must I say, astonishing banjo player. But I'm talking today with the Steve Martin of celestial fame. The fact is, we learn from Ephesians that those of us who are the outcalled and who have been pre-selected and called in Christ before the disruption of the world, it is this calling in our lives to show through us to the celestial beings the great truths that Paul teaches in Ephesians and Colossians. And by faith, we embrace that. So we got Steve, the celestial fame. And so now I'm glad to be hosting you and talking about you. Steve, could you, I'm thinking maybe first of all, just give me a little background of your family. When you were born, all of us, we are born on this stage that's already been set. The other characters are already on the stage. The circumstances and the environment of the stage and what's on the stage is already there. We just show up. Tell us about your the stage you showed up in.
Well, when I was born, my dad was he was actually in college at the Eastern Mennonite College, which is Eastern Mennonite University down in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Wow!
And he's told me a little bit about how that was life-changing for him, because he's seen what he called the liberal fall away in the Mennonite church there. And that started him on a journey. And so as I grew up, we were part of a ultra conservative Mennonite church. We weren't like the Amish. We had electricity. We drove cars and we did all that stuff. But our cars had to be black, and we had to dress a particular way, and there was all these rules that probably many of listeners can relate to, but it was to the extreme. I mean, it was every part of our life. We couldn't listen to music with musical instruments. Our hairstyles couldn't be worldly. Our clothes and all that was strictly dictated to what we wear and what we look like, places we could go, things we could do. And so until I got to the point, probably 5 or 6, my father was heavy into going down this route. And my dad was a student of the scriptures and always was. And so he was doing what he thought was right and what he thought was right for his family.
Yeah.
And he was a good dad. He took care of us. He provided for us. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. My brother's like 15 years younger than me and have a sister younger than that. So we kind of spread out. But yeah, so we lived a very um, kind of secluded lifestyle. We couldn't read the newspaper. We couldn't read the funnies. And so, and for many years, my dad was involved with Rod and Staff Publishers, which a lot of people are familiar with. Their school curriculum is used a lot in homeschool. A lot of homeschools use that. He wrote, it's kind of my background, so this is where it came from. He wrote a lot of their Sunday school material over the years. And then, in his later years, he actually had an online bookstore, Milestone Ministries, which sold sold Rod and Staff and a lot of other very conservative Mennonite publications and homeschool stuff and that type of thing. But it was a very restrictive, very legalistic, growing up.
Yeah. So where did you fit in the order of children altogether?
I'm the oldest.
Oh, you're the oldest. Okay.
I'm the oldest.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so now, and so in those really early years, you're in Virginia. Is that where you were born?
No, I was born in Hagerstown, Maryland. We were just in Virginia for a year or two, but most of my grown-up years are back in Hagerstown. So
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So when your dad finished up school, he went back to Hagerstown.
Right. That's where, his ancestors all are. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Very interesting.
And interestingly, my mother doesn't have the big Mennonite background that my father does. Her parents were first generation Mennonites, and lived in Flintstone, Maryland, which is, I don't know, 70, 80 miles west of Hagerstown. And so my background on that side is a very different, more colorful, if you will, ancestry.
Yeah.
And my dad took a lot of heat for marrying my mom because she was, different and all that. So
she had some worldly background.
Yeah. So that was
interesting.
Yeah. But I think my dad took that as a badge of honor because he always adored my mom. And,
wow. That's interesting. In fact, I think maybe you told me before that you had a grandmother who was it a grandmother born here in Bedford?
My mom was born in Bedford.
Oh, your mother. Okay. Yeah. Your mother was born in Bedford. I mean, Bedford's like, 30, 45 minutes from here. Wow. That's fascinating. So as you're growing up and of course your father had studied and had some minister training. And so your father was, as you were growing up, he was involved in a literature ministry.
Right.
And you had some participation in that, I'm sure.
Not really. I was just, he had an office where he worked and he had businesses for a while. We had a small convenience grocery store.
Interesting.
Which I worked in from I was 14 till, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, and he sold it. And then we were in the equipment rental business.
Yeah.
And so I worked in that. So I worked a lot in those businesses, and that, he had time to do the other things that he was doing. But
yeah. Well, that makes sense. That a lot of people involved in less profitable, structured religious things have to do something to make a living.
That's right.
Now, I know you told me one time about making a trip down into way deep in the South, right?
Yeah, my dad was an adventurer. We had a American Motors station wagon. I don't even know most people remember American Motors. And so this is like 50 years ago.
Wow.
And a camper pulled a camper, drove down through Mexico, down to Guatemala and to El Salvador. This was long before all the disruption down there, you know.
Yeah.
And it was fairly it was a fairly safe, you know. Let me step back. Years before that, we once flew to El Salvador, rented a car, and drove the whole way to Costa Rica. And that was down through Honduras and Nicaragua, you know, which is not something you might be able to do it today, but for many years, it's not something that you would want to try. Great. So, yeah, we did a lot of traveling, and of course, today I like to travel, so I still have that bug as well.
Yeah, interesting. Now, and your dad, if I remember correctly, your dad, you know, you talked about your dad having, you know, being a studier. You know, I get the impression, you know, that he really did have a heart for the scriptures, and he really had a heart for God. You know, we're just all influenced by the circumstances of our environments. And but he seemed to be, from the conversations we've had, always a seeker and trying to find what he thought was a better expression of truth and reality, the living of that. And it caused your dad to move around a lot.
Yeah, from Hagerstown, he moved down to Amelia County, Virginia, which is west of Richmond.
I didn't know that.
He was there for I don't know how many years, and then he moved to. I had a sister who married a guy from British Columbia, and they moved down to Eastern Oregon. So my parents moved out there again. It was tried, like you say, a better expression of beliefs. And then he, after a number of years, he moved to Western Oregon, where I have two sisters that live. And that's where he passed. But he was always searching for this, this perfect expression of and it was a very subset of the Mennonite tradition, that he was in. It wasn't like,
Oh, and I can identify with that. Maybe a lot of our listeners can. You know, it's like, something's wrong in the system, the religious system you're in, and you keep trying to find a better version of that, a better expression of that. And it's that phantom quest, but you can appreciate that heart, that longing to get it right, to be in a better place, Now, I would say that, it has to be very interesting, because I hear, a little bit from your discussions that, somewhere in your childhood and adolescence and so forth, you're beginning to have difficulty navigating this stage that you're on, this environment that you're in. Talk to us a little bit about the struggle you had to fitting in and so forth.
Well, my dad was he was a very conscientious man, and so he was able to, fit in, follow the rules, and do all that. And I guess I inherited the rebellious side from my mom's hillbilly upbringing. She was born in Bedford, but years before that, my grandparents are from West Virginia, just west of Harrisonburg, Virginia, and so I got some real hillbilly background. But I was never able to. I was unable to follow the rules. It didn't seem, I'd recommit and and a day later I'm already. There was just something in me that just couldn't, and part of it was it just seemed dumb to me, ridiculous, these things we had to do, What's the difference does it make whether my car is black or green or blue or red? What's the significance of this, what we call the plain suit? It was like the suit that Chairman Mao from the China War, but we had to wear a particular suit. The ladies had to wear particular clothes, and I just had a hard time understanding. And then they would tell you, well, clothes won't get you into heaven, and they probably won't keep you out. So why are we doing all this? And well, we had to set up boundaries. These things kept us from backsliding. And we would often talk about other Mennonites who were who had backslidden. What's the word they use? Starts with an A. I can't even think of it, but we talk
Apostasy.
Apostasy. Talk about churches that are apostatizing because they would let them wear more modern clothes, or so we had this, and I just had a hard time. And then he was very restrictive with the friends. Again, he thought he was doing the best for me.
Sure.
Friends from our church or sister churches or whatever. So I ended up sneaking out, running around with the neighborhood kids. And of course, we were looking at magazines and smoking, and all those kind of things. So always had this kind of rebellious wild streak. I'd sneak in the radio because we couldn't have radio or television, but in all of that, I never did anything. I never stole anything or robbed a bank or, we'd sneak off and go to the movies. That was always that kind of stuff,
Yeah, sure.
I had no desire to be like wild or, he never drank or took drugs or any of that stuff. It just seemed like the restrictions didn't make sense.
What's interesting is I think I see a little bit of a parallel between your dad and you. Your dad, it would appear just hearing your story here that he was unsettled and he was on the search for something. And it seems like you actually inherited that from him.
Oh, yeah.
That you too were unsettled. You just went a different direction with this unsettledness. You're trying to get to this place, and really your father was there. He would get to this place he thought would be the right place, and wasn't settled, and he would try again. And you were realizing your unsettledness now. And I think you told me before that this conflict, in your unsettledness, had you end up in Bible college.
Well, and it did cause a lot of problems between my dad and I.
Yeah,
of course. He was looking at what he thought was the best for me, and I didn't think it was. So I was always sneaking around doing stuff. But he sent me to Bible school, which for a 3-week term. And so I went. It was again, it was very conservative Mennonite school, and
he's gonna get you fixed up.
Yeah, and the two major subjects you had to take if you hadn't been there before, one was non-resistance, which is basically a lot of people call it pacifism or something like that. Which is the one thing I kind of hang on today from my background. And the other one was called separation. And so all these ways we need to be separated from the world, and it, not only was our clothes but our business, we didn't buy insurance. We were all self-insured. They couldn't belong to any clubs. You had to make sure that your spouse was on this, all these. So So that was a big emphasis, separation on being
Wow.
separated, being different,
Yeah.
looking different. And I hated that. I hated being, I mean, to them, looking different was a witness.
Yeah.
We're witnessing the world because of the way we dress and the way, to me, it just made us goofballs. It's like, we ain't proving anything other than, you see, back in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of hippies and stuff. Well, they looked like we're just another subset of goofballs like they were. But again, that was my inner struggle.
Sure. I can see that.
And our church was so conservative that even other churches we relate to were not as conservative. One thing that we had to do is wear the black hat. You've seen the black hats that the Amish all wear. And they made us wear it when we got with the youth from these other churches. Well, they just made fun of us, which I understand. I would have done the same thing, And so
yeah,
I'm not upset. I was upset at the rules that made me do that. And it's just this being different for the sake of being different.
Yes. Yeah.
Irritated me. Yeah.
Yeah.